If you think newer homes are safer than old homes, think again. As this test footage from UL shows, today's homes with open designs and lightweight construction materials allow a fire to grow more quickly and spread throughout the house faster than in traditional homes.
Fires occur in new homes just as frequently as they do with older homes. In fact, a fire that occurs at 2 a.m. in a newer home is a much more hazardous fire than one that would occur in an older home due to the factors of engineered lumber and many of the products that are in that house, and with that house being much tighter due to the energy code requirements. The ability to go ahead and escape from that home may be down to as low as 2 minutes in a newer home, which is a much reduced response time for the occupants to escape than what it is in an older home.
So what people refer to as legacy construction or dimensional lumber, basically the span limit on that was somewhere between 12 feet and 16 feet. So the maximum width that you would have, or the distance between load-bearing walls, would be that distance. Now that we have engineered lumber, which is lightweight, you can now span greater distances, say 20 feet, without having a load-bearing wall. Again, for everyday use, this is perfect. It provides a great living environment. Unfortunately, it takes away one of the protective measures for fire protection, and that's compartmentation. We have less compartmentation in homes today. And then secondly, because there's less mass, it takes less energy to heat it up and fail it. And so when it's exposed to fire, the collapse can happen very quickly.
So if you have, for example, an unprotected I-joist floor system in a basement, you can be looking at collapse of the home in 6 minutes or less in some cases. In the furnishing experiments, we examined 2 rooms side by side. One had legacy furnishings, one had modern furnishings. The legacy furnishings were able to obtain from what would be representative in probably a 1970s home, and we compared that to what you could find today off the shelf to put into any family room that you would find today. We ignited them both identically, allowed the fire to grow. In the modern room, we achieved flashover times as quickly as 3.5 minutes, versus the legacy room took as long as 30 minutes or more to reach those same flashover conditions.
9 out of 10 fire deaths occur in homes. Each year in the U.S., these fires injure and kill thousands of people. Annually, more than $7 billion in personal property literally go up in smoke and flames.
Both of the model codes, the ICC model codes and NFPA model codes, now require home fire sprinklers as a minimum protection level within those model documents. And you just have to go back to the intent of those codes in Chapter 1. And it says the intent is to provide a reasonable level of building and life safety protection, and it establishes a minimum level. Once you go ahead and you start removing home fire sprinklers from the code, you have dramatically reduced the protection levels within those documents.
In today's codes, in the model codes, residential sprinklers are in place. Now, of course, the codes get adopted at a local level, and sprinklers are not, that portion of the code has not been adopted nationwide in the United States. However, that's like having a firefighter there 24 hours. It's a situation where it can prevent that fire from transitioning to flashover. It can control that fire in many cases, keeping it in the incipient stage, the early growth stage, or putting it out altogether. So if you're really interested in occupant safety, that is clearly a major player, but perhaps on another level, it's also a big player for firefighter safety. They can now respond to a building fire that they can manage. They can respond to a building fire that their gear was designed to help them deal with and handle and quickly put out, again, affect their searches, affect their rescues. They can go to work to help the occupant much faster in the case of a sprinklered fire like that.
There's a huge transition taking place with regard to the public's perspective of fire sprinklers and fire safety. Starting in 2001, we changed the code to require all multifamily housing to have fire sprinkler systems. Most people, when they move out of their home and they leave their family, they move into an apartment or they move into a condominium or some type of multifamily occupancy. All of those new occupancies have fire sprinklers. At some point, would you not expect that consumers who are moving out of a sprinklered multifamily property are going to feel it's essential to have that same level of protection in their new home? It simply makes sense.
Most fatal home fires occur at night, and those at greatest risk are the people who have the most difficulty escaping a fire: young children, older adults, and people with disabilities. Fire sprinklers work automatically to control a fire while it is still small. That fast response limits the spread of deadly heat, smoke, and toxic gases, and gives occupants extra time to escape.
Working smoke alarms are an essential component of life safety in a home, but unfortunately what we're seeing in statistics is that working smoke alarms are not enough to protect you and your family. In around 2000, the statistics showed that roughly 30% of fire fatalities occurred in homes with working smoke alarms. By the mid-2000s, that jumped to 37%, and the latest statistics are now at 40% of fire fatalities occur in a home with a working smoke alarm. And that ties into a lot of the research that we've been doing. Homes burn faster, contents burn faster, you have less time to get out. Elderly, disabled, children, they can't get out in the 3 minutes that you now have to escape a fire, and the statistics are showing that as more and more fire fatalities are occurring in homes that have working smoke alarms.
With the reduced time to flashover we're seeing in modern homes, smoke alarms alone may not provide enough early warning to allow occupants to escape, which shows that residential sprinklers are extremely important.
If your jacket was on fire, would you want somebody to tap you on the shoulder and tell you that your jacket's on fire, or would you want somebody to put it out? You know, a smoke alarm will tell you that your jacket's on fire. A fire sprinkler system will put it out. The ICC process allows everyone to have a voice. It's kind of similar to a judge and jury process. Everyone gets to testify their positions and make their points in the code development process, and the home builders do that routinely. So they're a very active participant in the process, and on the IRC Code Development Committee, they own 4 of the 10 regular voting spots by a special agreement with ICC. So they have a huge amount of influence in the process. The vote that took place in Minneapolis was many years in the making. There were several previous code hearings over the course of previous years where sprinklers had come into the code first in 2001 for all multifamily residential. Then in 2006 there was an appendix added to the IRC to require sprinklers in all new homes. And then the year later, we proposed to get sprinklers in all new homes in the mandatory portion. When we got to Minneapolis, we had mustered enough government officials, because the only people that vote in the ICC process are government officials, and we mustered a really broad coalition of government officials, not just fire officials. There were building official associations, plumbing code officials, mechanical code officials, and the IRC coalition had organizations representing 44 different states plus national, international. It was a huge coalition of people that felt that it was the right time for the IRC to require fire sprinklers in all new homes. It's very interesting how NAHB's position on ICC's code development process changed as a result of the Minneapolis hearing. Prior to the Minneapolis hearing, Jeff Inks, who was vice president of NAHB's Codes and Standards Division, entered a quote in an ICC marketing brochure. And that quote reads, "ICC follows a straightforward approach in the development and maintenance of its codes. The process is clear, consistent, and conducted in an open forum that assures equal access for all interests." I think there's 3 points that need to be on record. The ICC's rules were written, the ICC's rules were followed, and even after a contentious appeal, the ICC Board of Directors upheld with a unanimous vote that the outcome of the Minneapolis hearing was proper.
In terms of the water demand, there's no impact of sprinkler systems on water demand. When the sprinkler systems go off, in most cases, it wouldn't affect the system at all.
The NFPA 13D fire standard allows designers to utilize just a single line that supplies both fire and domestic flow.
In most cases, the flow is between 15 gallons to 25 gallons per minute. Nothing more than what you'd see on the fixture count of an average home. That allows us to tie it into the domestic system and really make it an extension of the existing plumbing system in the home.
The connection includes a single supply from the water main to the house.
It's also less cost to the builder to have a single line. It's probably just a more efficient design also. And in having this single line system, you really have now what is just an extension of the domestic water supply.
In our community, our water purveyors are very, very supportive. As we talked about earlier, we give a 40% connection charge credit for somebody that goes ahead and installs fire sprinklers. And our water purveyor realizes that that property owner is taking on their own responsibility for their own fire protection. So they don't have to go ahead and subsidize the other property owners that have not fire sprinkler protected in their homes. And we don't have to worry about providing manual fire suppression water to that property with those significantly reduced fire flows because fire sprinklers are provided in that home.
Actually, as Economic and Community Development Director, I too had heard that statement made, and it concerned me because I wanted to make sure that as we were moving forward, making proactive decisions to include fire sprinklers in all new homes that were constructed in the town where I lived, Pleasant View, Tennessee, and Cheatham County, Tennessee, we wanted to make sure that that statement was false. We thought it was, but we didn't know for sure. But we knew the one way to find out was to go and pull actual numbers from a home that was purchased by a first-time home buyer. And we actually pulled the MLS data and analyzed it. And what we found was that the fire sprinklers actually were 1.3% of the cost of that home. And when I asked the home buyer, did that impact your ability to purchase your home, your first home? They said, absolutely not. We did not even know what the fire sprinkler cost was. I was very pleased, though, to see that it was 1.3%. I knew that it wasn't going to push that first-time home buyer out of the market, as I had been told, but it felt good to know that with actual facts and data from a sale in our community. The other thing that we were told was that we would stop growth. Now that also concerned us from an economic community development standpoint. We were wanting to encourage quality growth, and what we found is that it did not stop that at all. As a matter of fact, it encouraged safer communities, and we were able to capitalize on that and even market our community as being different and safer and our quality of life exceptional. And we included fire sprinklers in that messaging.
I think where the builders need to go is recognizing that the biggest competition for a new home builder is existing homes. And why not recognize, market, and take advantage of an essential life safety feature that's certainly going to be attractive to people with families or elderly people, the fire sprinkler system, as something that makes an existing home obsolete. Existing homes in most communities don't have fire sprinkler systems. What really can differentiate a new home for a builder is offering the latest and best safety systems, like a fire sprinkler, and encourage a home buyer to buy a home that's new with that system, as opposed to going and buying an existing home that can't compete.
Over the last 5 years, we've seen a pretty dramatic shift in many of the builders, and they are much more accepting of home fire sprinklers. And one of the major reasons for that is their communities, when they go ahead and install fire sprinklers and have them in their model homes, the people that are going through those homes and prospective buyers really see the value of home fire sprinklers, and it becomes a very strong marketing tool. Many of those prospective buyers want to build and have homes that are protected by sprinklers so their families are protected. They see it in environments that they are in on a day-to-day basis, and they want that same protection level in their own home.
Sprinklers operate individually and only in response to the high temperature of a fire. Smoke or steam will not cause a sprinkler to activate. Interconnected smoke alarms also cannot cause the sprinklers to operate. Only the sprinkler closest to the fire will activate, spraying water directly on the flames. In most home fires, only one sprinkler is needed to control a fire.
I think there's a portion of the population that still just gets their perspective of home fire sprinklers and fire sprinkler systems in general from the latest movie that was out. And so I think we need to continue to go ahead and educate along those lines. But once that small little piece of information is provided and passed along and they understand that only the head that activates that is necessary, they accept that information very quickly.
I frequently go to public hearings and things where I hear builder, the biggest complaint is the cost. Nobody wants to pay, these $5, $6, $10 a square foot, and unfortunately, that's not the cost. And everybody's putting this bad press out there. The study that we did in '08 came up with the cost of $1.61 a square foot, and then more recently in 2013, we did a cost that came out to $1.35 a square foot. As you can see, the trend is going down, and I think what's happening is there's more homes being sprinklered, it's driving more competition, and the cost is coming down tremendously. I can tell you that in the regions that we do cost in, our cost is even below that. And in some markets, now that you have the state of California, I know the cost there is close to $1 a square foot. Same thing in the Maryland area. As these states are coming in there, the cost is being brought down tremendously. I think the sprinkler contractors as well as the home builders, everyone's adapting and coming up with a better solution of doing everything. The home builders are doing a lot better job getting educated. The sprinkler contractors are coming up with new ways of installing the stuff, as well as the manufacturers are coming up with a lot better products. There are things out nowadays that weren't around 20 years ago, and it's making the job easier, cheaper, just driving down the cost. And I think this is going to be a continued trend.
On the surface, that sounds like it might be a good idea to let the buyer have a choice, but in reality, it falls apart when you take a look at only the first home buyer is going to be the one that gets to choose. And I read a report from the National Association of Realtors in 2013 that shows that homes change hands on an average of every 9 years. So if the first home buyer were to choose not to put sprinklers in, you're denying the opportunity to 7, 8, 10 families in the future who might live in that home who can't have fire sprinklers protecting their family because it's just not feasible to retrofit existing homes. The other problem is that the fire service is stuck with that home for the next 100 years as being an unsprinklered home, and it's a risk to the community, and everybody in the community pays for that level of fire protection when they have to staff the fire stations in order to protect all these unsprinkled properties.
In the city of Altamont Springs, we passed a fire sprinkler requirement back in the mid-'80s, and it's been in place for a significant period of time, and our city commission has always been very supportive of that. And the experience we've had with that is obviously we are not having fire deaths in home fire sprinkler protected properties. That's the #1 goal of the ordinance in the first place. In addition, our fire protection resources for the city, we're able to go ahead and take into consideration these home fire sprinkler systems in place in protecting properties in addition to other commercial properties. And that's been a basic of our whole city design from a aspect of how the city's been built. It's been a core component of our planning and our zoning requirements is keeping fire sprinkler systems in our code and providing protection for our citizens.
An uncontrolled fire will quickly spread flames, heat, and smoke throughout a home. Flashover often occurs within 4 minutes after a fire starts. Tremendous damage occurs before the fire department arrives, which is typically 9 to 12 minutes after the fire has started. The property loss in a home fire with a sprinkler system is typically only a fraction of the loss in an unsprinklered home. Fire sprinklers save water and reduce